Hello, everyone. I'm Jean-Claude BeyondMystic, and welcome. Tonight, of course, for this episode is The Break in the Clouds with the wonderful Penny Kelly. You can find her at pennykelly.com and also here on her brand new Penny Kelly official YouTube channel. Penny, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm good. I'm very good. It's good to be here.
Excited to have you on. And also, please join me in welcoming Julie from Maison Jupiter. Here on the web, yes, maisonjupiter.com, and also here on the Academy, where she just launched with Meg the Astrology Foundations course. You can find that at beyondmystic.academy. Julie, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great and can't wait to see what Penny has to say on her latest booksies. I'm very excited.
I'm actually excited. I was trying to do some work earlier today and find her latest look-see, and I couldn't find it on YouTube. And lo and behold, there's a for that, folks. So let me just bring up here. If you're looking for the latest October 15 look-see, Penny and crew wisely chose to probably put this on Rumble only. So this is Penny's Rumble channel. Let me bring the link to this down in the live chat there. So if you guys want to go listen to that after the show and get a little bit more context for you guys. So we're currently simulcasting here on Julie's YouTube, my YouTube, and also here on Rumble for a couple of minutes. We're going to talk about, generally speaking, Penny, about taking the high road right now, in the sense that there's a lot of rhetoric and there's a lot of programming being thrown at us here in this divide and conquer tactic, to where if you don't stand with this guy, then clearly you're standing with terrorists. That's the only choice we're being given here, and it's much, much, much more complex than that, of course. Guys, if you want to have more details on the complexity of that, the context in the Middle East, I encourage you to go watch the War Correspondent show from earlier today at 4 p.m. We did get into that, and we got into the narrative of war, or the narratives, the war on the narratives, basically here being exposed. And on that note, maybe we can spend a little bit of time here on YouTube. Actually, this would be good to talk about the book. Let me see if I can bring this up here. Gods of Eden. Just as an intro, Julie, quickly explain to the audience here on YouTube what this book is all about and how it sheds light on the matrix of control on the planet here, but one of the tactics being used against humanity over and over again, which is this the divide and conquer tactic. What's this book all about? And I note the big ass UFO there in the middle of the page. Also.
Yeah, it's hard to see at first, but then when you see it, you cannot unsee it. So basically, I think it's a really good book that retraces the history of how we can say that ET infiltration, or the overlords that have control over humanity for eons. So the subtitle of the book is "The Chilling Truth About Extraterrestrial Infiltration and the Conspiracy to Keep Humankind in Chains." So I was reading that, and then a lot of passages of the book really kind of touched me in the context of everything that's going on right now in the Middle East. So I was like, maybe it's something we should bring up for the shows that we're doing, because the author of the book, I think he has a really good way of explaining how the same strategies have been used over and over again to keep control over humanity. And one of those tactics, obviously, is the word that I don't think I can pronounce here. That starts with a W.
Okay, hold on. I'm reading in the chat that this feed, for some reason, is not connected to the Rumble feed. So we are only currently running YouTube streams right now, which is problematic, because now that I've gone live, I can't simply add the Rumble feed. So what we're going to have to do, folks, so let me bring up, so if you guys are watching us now, yes, okay, so there's clearly people waiting in the Rumble feed right now. I'm going to bring this link down to the YouTube chats right now.
Somebody says, wait, it's now up on Rumble.
No, it's not working. Oh, Rumble is working fine.
Rumble is working fine.
Where is it connected? Oh, it is.
Oh, maybe there was a delay, just a delay.
Well, let me double check that on my end just to make sure.
Okay.
Recording in progress. Okay. And if I go here. Oh, it is. It is. Maybe. Okay. It is.
Okay.
It's fine. Okay. Good. Okay. All right. Sorry about that little hiccup, guys. Let's go back, Julie, to this book, The God of Eden.
Yeah.
What?
We went into details. Of course, people can go watch the War Correspondence show to get a little bit more context. But for the sake of the conversation we're going to have tonight here with Penny, we're going to go into her look-see. We're going to look at how this is going to unfold here. But what would be the main highlight, Julie, of some of the things we shared today that you think is important here, just to set the stage for this conversation tonight?
Well, I guess it's not to take part on either one side or the other, and just to keep in mind why those tactics were placed in the beginning, because they were so that we could be in a state of eternal survival mode, and we would not be ever, let's say, out of this survival mode to pursue our journey of spiritual liberation. So
Right.
that's, I think, the main point here that I think people need to remember. And as emotionally disturbing as what everything that is going on right now, it really is. It's right now that I think we have to really remember why we came here as souls, and keep our frequency as high as we can to not fall into those traps from the dark.
Very good. Thank you for that. Let me ask you the same thing here too. And Penny, I remind you, we're still on YouTube, so let's be careful on some of the wording. But your interpretation of this, I don't know if you've read the book, The God of Eden.
No, I haven't.
So interestingly enough, it talks about, dispersing humans. It talks about the Tower of Babel. It talks about confusing us so that we couldn't rebel against these gods. They're talking about the Elohim, the El, and the Quadre of people running the show. It talks about how nobody on the planet actually benefits from war. The people who actually do are not on the planet, so they're never in harm's way, but they get humans to fight amongst each other, as opposed to fighting against the overlords, or in this particular case what they call the custodians. That's the term they're being used here in the book, God of Eden. Now, in that context, and in the context of the little man in the brown robes and some of your ET contacts, there's a question right now of this custodianship maybe having transferred hands as recently as maybe the last decade, and the fact that the evolution of humans is now back into our realm of control, but we don't know it yet. We still have these little minions fighting at the earth level right now. Set the stage for that. Maybe we can have a little bit of a conversation here on YouTube for the audience, and then we'll move the rest of the convo to Rumble.
Okay. So it's really very simple, but it's really hard to get your mind around it when you hear it the first time. So a long time ago, I'm not going to say how long, but it appears to be like 5,000 or 6,000 years ago. Okay. And this is not the first try. A group of beings came here to take over the planet. They always use the same MO every time. They find a village that's isolated somewhere on the planet. First, they study everything on the planet, and they get the language, and they see how the people live, and what their expectations are, and people that are not from here, that have extraordinary technology, they can just zero in on your frequency signature, and they know everything about you and how you operate and how you think and how you feel and how you are most likely to respond in various situations. And so then they target somebody. I think I've mentioned this a couple places, but it bears repeating until you get it. They target a village, and they create some kind of havoc that disturbs the family relationships. And the children that are coming up, growing up at that point in time, are severely distorted, is how they like to think of it. And then they nurture those distortions, and they make, they're kind of almost like I probably shouldn't use this term, but they're like a guardian angel for those individuals that are the most twisted, and they make everything work out in favor of those individuals, and they track those individuals over time, And then
They're basically breeding psychopaths to become the leader of the leaders here on the planet. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. You and I talked about this in 2021, mind you.
Yeah, right.
If you haven't seen this episode 2, it's a must watch. It's on pay-per-view. At that time,
Yeah.
we were having a lot of troubles here on YouTube. We had been deleted here.
Right.
We were talking about ETs, human that worked there, and yeah, the whole context and the MO that she's describing here. So if you want more details, please do go check it out. But continue, Penny.
Okay, so then they make everything work out for those psychopathic or sociopathic or even just people with pretty obvious personality disorders.
Yeah.
And those people then move into positions of power, and those they find other people that are easily manipulated, and they keep building this structure. The goal is to build a structure that kind of reaches around the entire region, and then to like intuitively into some, I mean, there's always people on the planet that are very intuitive. Sometimes they're writers, sometimes they're psychics, sometimes they're doctors, sometimes they are astrologers. Sometimes they're just people that everybody kind of looks up to. And they take that individual and they insert this concept called the corporation. And once that term corporate is instituted, that gets built out, and then that becomes the control mechanism that eventually takes over all of the power structures, and it gets control of everybody's life. Corporate is you're 3/4 of the way to planetary takeover. By the time corporations begin to be introduced, and then it's just a matter of solidifying that control. And once everybody is beholden, reliant on the corporation, the money that it takes to buy what you need, and the fact that you don't produce anything anymore, you are just a consumer, it's over. It's over unless the people wake up. And then because, they don't usually wake up until the last minute, and maybe not at all, but at the last minute, they can stand up. And then it comes down to something that those of us that are not part of that whole ET takeover thing are, we're taught it's not about what you do, it's what you don't do. And I was thinking about this a few days ago, actually, when I was in training with Don Juan way back 40 years ago. One of the things he emphasized over and over was not doing. It's not what you do, it's what you don't do. Not doing was far more powerful than doing, because not doing left you with your energy and the results you were after, whereas doing leaves you maybe with the results, but you've lessened or lowered your energy.
And most likely doing something on behalf of the cabal, even though you think it's on your own behalf. So now you're using your energy to promote somebody else's manifestation of this reality and matrix of control.
That's right. Yeah. So way back when, almost at the same time that I was dealing with Don Juan, I was also dealing with the little men in brown robes and a few other beings in other dimensions, because that was during the early years of Kundalini when I had unlimited consciousness. It was amazing. And if I, you've probably heard this before, if I only knew then what I know now, I would have handled it so much differently. But I didn't. I was totally ignorant, and I was struggling and was trying to make it all go away. But that same message of not doing came through the robes when they said it is most likely that your people are not going to wake up in time. And if they do, the only thing that is going to take down the corporate system, the business that has taken over, or they put it very nicely, business will have stepped into the role of government, would be not doing. And they just, over and over, they brought that up in different ways, very gently, very pointedly, but not in a scary manner. just that it would come down to not doing. And I've thought about that 100 different ways, 100 different times. And I think we're at the point where that is our only option left, is not doing. And that's going to be not banking, not buying, not a lot of stuff, you know, not handing over control of the daily life to the, what did you call them? Not the controllers, the
custodians.
The custodians. Yeah.
Right.
So, and that takes preparation. And I'm realizing now, after all this time, why they were so adamant with the robes, that I write down what they wanted, you know, what they had showed me. One of the things they said that I kind of blew off was, it takes a long time to set up for not doing. And when you're set up, you cannot do by just, okay, you know, do what you want. I'm not doing anything. I'm not going to speak. I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to perform in the way that I always have. I'm not going to participate, blah, blah, blah. When you have to stop doing or not do, and you're not ready, then it's a problem. People suffer a little bit. And they said, and I was remembering this the other day too. We talk a lot in our time about higher consciousness. And I like to use the term a more expansive consciousness, because higher is like one of those hierarchical things that just gives people a false attitude of, you know, I'm better than you, or I'm higher up in consciousness, or I'm more evolved, or whatever. And I'm like a horse pucky. You know, if you're doing or talking like that, you're worse off. So there's this idea that we all have to reach this higher consciousness. And I remember, I don't remember, I think it was toward the end of the Little Men in Brown Robes conversations, where they said just one time, it isn't going to be the higher consciousness. It's whether you're going to come together as one consciousness. And at the time, I just didn't get that. It just wasn't important. I didn't, you know, I just didn't think that was really all that critical. Now I'm looking at it and thinking, that's the other half of the not doing. Everybody has to be together enough to have an impact.
It's that what we're hearing here in the last couple of years with the situation, the health situation in the last 3 years, we've heard the words bandied about peaceful non-compliance, which is kind of what you're saying here, the not doing, right?
I like that.
But that would suggest that everybody has to be on the same page also with the peaceful non-compliance. We can't have just part of the population doing that, because they'll probably get arrested and put in jail. Tomorrow Lynch, like, you know, some of these Freedom Convoy trucker people. So that what you're talking about there is getting everybody on the same page and working in unison. And eventually what that does is it renders the controllers or the minions of those custodians irrelevant. And that's their biggest fear. And once humans realize that these people are in fact relevant, then it's game over. Then we can move on to what Cliffy calls the make-away civilizations, where we just get on our lives and create the world that we want for humans. So let's take maybe 2-3 more minutes here on YouTube, and I want you to shift the dial forward. So I'm going to bring back that poster that we did in 2021. You explained, and it's contextual here to the conversation we're going to have in the Middle East, and why perhaps it's very timely with the exposure of those custodians, or the minions of those custodians that are going to be exposed through perhaps this conflict right now in the Middle East. But at some point here, you talked about the MO. We get to a certain point where those custodians realized somehow that this was lost and decided to go. Explain that to the audience members, where we're at now, and why on one hand it looks horrible and it looks like we're losing, but it's because of mommy and daddy leaving the shop that it looks so horrible. We're just dealing now with the low rung stupid human level custodialship of the planet, and that's really what's being exposed right now. Try to tread carefully with some of the words, not using some of the keywords, the regions, the names, and the bad words. Explain that to the audience members, and then we're going to shift over to Rumble to get even more into the detail of all of this. Go ahead.
Okay. So back in May of, I think, 2021 or 2020, I forget now which it was. I think it was 2020. I got a message from my people that said, they've given up. And now, they used a different term, which is, I can't pronounce it. But I knew immediately that the people who were here, the beings who had started this whole thing and had been basically pulling all the strings, setting everything up, and they do the same thing every time. They get all these humans, or whatever planet they're on, whatever humanoids they have to deal with, they get them all involved in this takeover effort where they never understand really who's really up at the top. And so they're looking at the money, they're looking at the power, they're looking at the control, they're looking at some other stupid thing, how many women or hot men can I have, or whatever, and other ugly things that we'll just leave unmentioned. But they're very small, narrow-minded, and if and when, it's always if until it actually happens, if the ETs at the top who are orchestrating the whole thing pull out, nobody ever knows it was them. It's the people that are left behind that have set up the corporate structure that are left to...
They become the patsies in all of this to take the blame.
They are, except, and they do take the blame. A lot of them take some serious blame. Yeah. But the thing that it takes so long for them to figure out is that there's nobody up top anymore. And so what happens is they make an order, they give an order, they pay off somebody to do something. Nobody ever comes along and says, don't do that anymore. You can't do that. And so they get away with more and more and more. And then, it takes a long, people are so loving naturally. They're so giving naturally. They're so cooperative in a very natural way. And so they're trying to make things work, and they're going along with what the authorities are saying. And they believe in their own vision of what they think is happening. They never stop to look at what's really going on.
Right.
So it takes a long time for the whole thing to come unglued. And what happens, and it happens this way almost every time as well, those who are left in the corporate structures they go too far. They get ridiculous. And it's a case of nobody's stopping me. I guess I can do whatever I want. And that is what brings their whole house, their whole structure down on their head, because they get to the point where they fail to have what I'm going to call any sense of
restraint.
What's too far. Yeah,
right,
restraint.
Right.
Any common sense. They're not gauging what other people are doing because they're unable to be empathic or even sympathetic, let alone empathic. And so they end up taking it down. Now, on the good side, and this is something that I just don't hear anybody talk about, when you have an entire structure of corruption set up, and it gets more and more ridiculously over the top, more and more people wake up, look at that, and go, I don't like that. I don't want to support that. I'm not going to live that way. They begin, if they're not completely hypnotized, they begin to move into what I call fourth dimensional thinking, which is a different kind of thinking. It's more cooperative. It's more healing. It's more attuned to peacefulness, to everybody being taken care of, to technology that doesn't hurt, to governmental systems that are very, very personal and local. There's all kinds of leanings that begin to show up. And the great value, and this is part of planetary evolution as well, is that these guys are ramping up, the idiots that are doing the corporate thing are ramping up their stupidity and their wars and their takeover and their efforts to make people hurt in order to comply. And meanwhile, the people are just moving over here. And you get this slow but steady move and appreciation for a different kind of consciousness. And that is fourth dimensional consciousness. And some that are already in 4D start moving over into 5D. And so those who refuse to see, to smell the coffee, we'll say that, they are hypnotized by what's happening. Oh, oh my God, it's terrible. And so they end up lost. They stay in that 3D. It self-destructs. It always self-destructs. They almost always burn the place up. And those people who wake up and who move away from that, it does break up families. Sometimes it does break up neighborhoods. It does
relationships.
Yeah, it does. But that's the choice, because nobody can do your perception for you. Nobody can do your breathing for you. Why would you think somebody else can do your thinking or use your authority for themselves? Your authority belongs to you, and you need to use that authority and to learn from it in order to expand your consciousness and learn from your decisions. When you don't learn from your own decisions, we say, well, you're caught in karma. Karma is just making decisions. And if you make the same stupid decision again and again, well, what are you going to get? You're going to get the same results. So you begin to make new decisions. You begin to not do what you used to do. And there's where the move, that's where we're at right now.
Well, that's very well said, Penny. And that's it reminds me of audio clip that Cliff High put out a couple of weeks ago called Splits Happen. And he's suggesting here that what you're describing is actually underway right now. This split from the matrix of control timeline or perception of time and reality to more of this woo timeline and perception of reality. And he was suggesting in this particular video, guys, you can find that on his Substack, that by December, the controllers, the custodians, their mainstream media puppets would lie so egregiously, as you're saying here now, they go so far without the restraint, to the point where the rest of the die-hard sleeper normies go, yeah, I'm not playing this anymore. I'm moving on, and I'm going to go watch Penny Kelly, or I'm going to go watch, something on Rumble and BitChute to get my news because you guys are lying to me. So this is happening right now. Of course, we see it in the polls of the mainstream media, the fact that they're not getting advertiser money and they have to be subsidized by the government now to continue their propaganda operations. It's happening now, but apparently this acceleration here is just upon us now. So I thought that was very interesting. You also mentioned, let's see if I can bring this up on the screen, these guys not using the restraint, not having the boss to tell them, or to use a little bit more foresight here as the custodians on the planet, trying to control the slave population. That's the way it's being described here in the book, The Gods of Eden. You just said that things are coming unglued. Well, speaking of things coming unglued, I think Joe Biden's mask is coming unglued here today, and I was joking about this on Twitter. I'm like, is Joe Biden a Men in Black Balchinian? So he appears to have a pair of testicles there, kind of like this Balchinian ET.
Oh
so
my
you guys
God.
haven't seen Men in Black, you don't know what I'm talking about. But anyways, I thought that was just funny. But again, it's in your face, literally in your face here, that things are not what
literally.
Well, Penny, first of all, thank you so much for that. I think that sets the stage now. I think we're going to move over to the Rumble feed to get into a little bit more details. We have some astrology to bring into the mix also, and we do want to get into your latest look-see from October 10th to kind of map out what's going on, or how this is going to play out maybe in the next week or two. And I also wanted to bring into the context for the Rumble audience this idea that perhaps this conflict that we are being presented and that appears to be escalating tomorrow here for this very specific alignment also is really a theater in sorts to expose some of this matrix of control, all the way up to perhaps the custodians, right? And this is one of the last parts of humanity, not just waking up in the sense, but also finally realizing that they do have the reins of control of their own evolution, and that there's a big cleanup that needs to happen. So it appears that we're in that time frame now. So folks, if you want to join us for that conversation, if you're watching us here on YouTube, on Maison Jupiter, and also on Beyond Mystic, let me just bring the link, the Rumble link here in the live chat. So if you want to go switch over to the Rumble feed there, we'll meet you there in a couple of seconds. I'm going to disconnect now. Remove, yes.